increased anxiety, not sleeping well. It just came to the point where I just couldn't continue. I lost my job, my marriage broke down, and I had to go and live with my parents. I now jokingly refer to that as my George Costanza. That episode lasted for 5 years and never thought I would ever recover. Probably the biggest thing is losing hope. Men are very poor at that they think they should be able to sort it out themselves. And tragically, that's why men account for 75% of suicide. Someone introduced me to Gavin Larkin, the founder of Are You OK? So from day one, when I heard the concept, I said, I'm in. It's never as bad as you think. Share it with another person if you haven't done that already. I do share my story because I want people to know that even if you're thinking things are hopeless, they're really not.
Welcome everyone to the Reconnect to Self podcast, the show that helps you ultimately rediscover what brings you joy. My name is Scott. I am your host and also a filmmaker, and as always, I'm here with my wife Tracy, who is a counsellor of 20 years, a qualified breathwork instructor, and certified psychedelic assisted therapist. Tracy, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for today's guest. I know I always say that. Everyone always says that.
I know, we get good guests, that's why.
We have good guests.
We do.
So today's guest has spent years in the senior corporate roles at companies like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer and Kearney before a severe depression led to an ICU admission and time in a psychiatric hospital. That experience became the foundation for everything he does now, including co-founding Are You OK Day, which is Australia's national mental health movement. I'm sure everyone from Australia has heard of that. Mm-hmm. He's written 5 books, hosts his own podcast, The Caring CEO, which is number 2 globally for workplace mental health, and has genuinely lived the journey to reconnect back to himself. So he seems like our sort of guest. Welcome to the show, Graeme Cowan. G'day, Graeme.
Well, lovely to join you, Scott and Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I sort of alluded to it in the intro there. It's always nice to start with someone's backstory. So you were flying high in the corporate world, I think it's safe to say. And the intro to your book sort of goes into this really quite nicely. Do you want to sort of tell us what happened? Like, what was your life looking like? And then how did it sort of fall down? I don't know how to say that nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did all look, very, very positive. I was in a well-paying job and wife, family, home, all those sorts of things. But it went through, the business was involved in executive search or recruitment, and we were targeting the e-commerce sector, and it was booming, a bit like, what's happening now in, e-commerce companies. But there was a tech crash, and basically the business really fell dramatically overnight. And I felt like I needed to put on a brave face for everyone, be positive, but it was really fighting against reality, and I kept on getting this increased anxiety, not sleeping well, and it just came to the point where I just couldn't continue. And in a very, very short period of time, I lost my job, my marriage broke down, and I had to go and live with my parents. And I'm now,
How old? Because this was, I think, the year 2000. Is that right?
Yes, it was. So I was about 40, I think, at the time, around about
Right.
40. So, and, but moving back with my parents at that age, I now
humbling.
jokingly refer to that as my George Costanza years. The lovable loser from Seinfeld.
That's one of my favorite.
Perfect reference for Scott.
Yeah, I could quote it that show in its entirety.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite characters. You mentioned, and because I think, the wording in the book was you lost your job. Like, did you get fired because you were so stressed, or did you quit, or what happened?
I was basically on income protection leave to start with. But
Right.
then it came to a point where it didn't seem possible I would return. And then I formally lost my job then.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair to, Carney, they, had me on income protection and I still theoretically had a job to go back to, but I just didn't feel that I was able to.
Yep.
And, that episode lasted for 5 years. I've had to work for
Wow.
5 years and never thought I would ever recover. I was just
Wow.
in that red zone. When you spend a lot of time there, everything just seems very dire. And, probably the biggest thing is losing hope. So it
Yeah.
was, a gradual recovery. I remember being in the kitchen with my mother and up at Foster, a beautiful place on the north coast of New South Wales. But I was feeling really sorry for myself. I'd just come out of hospital and, saying, why me? Why me? But, basically, she looked me in the eye and said with one of those mother stares that she believed I'd use this experience to help other people. And it did sow a seed, and it didn't
Mm.
certainly come together very quickly. As I said, it was about a 5 years of recovery. It was reconnecting with friends again. It was committing to walking every day, which was a big help, and
Mm.
eventually also embracing meditation. I
Mm.
tried to do it when I was depressed, but couldn't do that.
Mm.
Mm.
But that was, has really become a foundational habit for me. I meditate every day, get up about 5:30 and do it for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that sets the day up really well.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to, because I know you've got heaps of topic or content that we can go through about sort of how you fixed your life, but I do want to delve a little bit deeper. So you said it happened really quickly. So for anyone who's old enough, you remember it's referred to as like the dot-com bust, right? I
Yeah.
think the year
Yeah.
2000 when any kind of businesses related to online, so they'd all been massively inflated. Maybe in a similar way to what's happening now with AI companies potentially. I mean, who knows if AI companies is a false boom. But a huge number, I guess almost a bit like the GFC, a huge number of internet-related companies lost tons and tons of value and everything became really, really tough.
Yeah.
And
Very
so
much so.
so you were feeling the pressure to go, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so explain how it happens quickly. Like, were you perfectly normal before then, or were you a bit stressed
No,
anyway? Or
no, I'd had probably 4 episodes of depression before, so
right,
it wasn't like the first thing that happened to me. And I still have to be very self-aware now because, I'm always vulnerable to it. And so,
Mm.
but what happened was, as this urgency for new directions sort of really built, I wasn't sleeping well. And that's usually
Mm.
my big trigger, waking up early,
yep,
3 a.m., not being able to go back to sleep again.
yeah,
Also, a sense of anxiety and not being able to sort of shake the anxiety. So it probably, built up over, I don't know, maybe about 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
mm,
and then I discovered I just couldn't do it anymore, and
Mm.
that's of course a very very hard decision to come to, but I just had to do it, and
So
but
you came to that yourself, that you couldn't carry on?
yeah, essentially, yeah,
Mm.
definitely,
and does that
and
look like you can't get out of bed, or what?
it was just my mind was really affected, and I remember one time, I was doing a pitch to a client about doing an assignment, and my mind just went completely blank,
Yeah,
completely blank,
Mm.
not
wow,
even
Mm.
losing the train of thought, but completely
Mm.
blank. And, that hadn't happened to me before. So I
mm,
knew that that was a
Yeah, big
really
sign.
big thing to happen. And
Mm.
yeah, so that was probably the moment I knew I had to leave when I just had that sort of freeze up with the client.
yeah. And I think you mentioned anxiety there. Like I've had my struggles with anxiety, and
Mhm.
a good way to, I think, reference it for people is it's related to uncertainty. Like your brain always wants to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And even if it's bad stuff, it'll predict. And so particularly I think for smart or creative people, like my brain has an amazing way of predicting all of these horrendous things that could potentially happen, which, you know, can make you prone to anxiety. So I relate to that feeling of waking up in the morning. I used to, even before my eyes were open, like my brain would wake up, but my eyes were still closed, and I could feel the anxiety flood through my body. And that was the way I started my day for a couple of years, which is
horrendous.
Not nice. Not nice.
yeah, no, it's very, very unpleasant. So, and explain or go into a bit of the story of what was happening in your relationship at that point, because obviously, you know, that would take its toll as well.
Yeah, well, you know, there's certainly, you know, strains and pressures with that. When you are depressed or anxious, it's very, you know, you're naturally me focused. You know, woe is me, everything's going wrong with me. And I think you become a not as good partner or
Yep.
colleague or friend because you are so self-immersed. And so, yeah, eventually the marriage did break down. And, you know, I just had to, all I could think of was my parents that I'd go and spend some time with. And I was very, very grateful to them. They were really supportive and, you know, helped me to remember times when I was good and, you know, having a very positive life and that support. And so, you know, when that happened and I wrote my first book, Back from the Brink, uh, someone introduced me to Gavin Larkin, the founder of Are You OK? And I just knew, just based on my experience, just how important it was to have, you know, good people around you, giving encouragement, showing care, believing in you. And, you know, so from day one, when I heard the concept, I said, I'm in. And, you know, he said, what, you want to be an ambassador? And I said, no, I'm happy to, you know, really throw in a lot of hours as well. And, you know, that first year was pretty challenging because we had really no money, no full-time employees, and there was a core team of just four of us basically.
Wow.
But you
So you
know,
just had this idea and you just all got together and were like, how can we make this happen?
yeah, the original Gavin had tragically lost his father to suicide, and so that was the real impetus of what we were doing. It had happened 15 years before, but Gavin was having to explain to his son why the grandfather wasn't around anymore. And it helped him to realize just that these things aren't just a point in time. They have, you know, probably impact forever, you know,
Yeah.
less up and down in terms of the severity of that impact. And so the initial idea, a documentary about the ongoing and huge impacts of suicide around family, but you know, also friends and all those types of things. And they pitched it to, you know, I think the ABC and SBS, but it didn't quite get up for whatever reason. And then Gavin and a lady who was helping her, Yanina Nern, had this idea of this day. And, you know, so it started from quite simple beginnings. But Gavin came from an advertising background. He was a CEO of I think it was called the Brand Shop at the time. And so he was very, very good with, you know, branding and messaging. And the tagline was just brilliant that a conversation could change a life. Interestingly, it was originally a conversation could save a life. And we were, you know, hopefully in the suicide prevention business, but a couple of us, myself included, just felt that that was a bit too intimidating for people to, you know, how do I
Yeah.
know if they're suicidal? What if I
Yeah.
say the wrong thing? And so we pulled it back and eventually decided to have that change a life, a conversation change the life. And that, to be honest, was just brilliant. It meant that it was relevant for everyone. You know, we all have our ups and downs in life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we can, you know, be the recipient of a caring conversation, but we can also, you know, look out for our family members and colleagues and ask, are they okay, and really listen with empathy.
Yeah. How amazing that you've been part of this from the very, very beginning and watch it grow, like watch it grow so much. Even I was telling my kids today who were interviewing on the podcast, and normally they don't know who people are, and I said, yeah, but he co-founded the Are You OK Day, and they're like, oh, okay, like they really knew, that concept.
I think everyone in the country
I
must
think
know.
so
Yeah,
too.
they've done
Yeah,
a
like
great job with the marketing.
Yeah.
It's, everyone knows
really,
it.
really well received. I think, that's a national thing, that it's in schools, it's in workplaces. So you've done an amazing job with that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that we've tried to really adapt targeted programs for areas. So there is a targeted program for primary schools. There's a
Ah,
targeted program for high schools. And so it uses languages which is relevant,
right.
that kids that age will understand.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, we've got a special week for railways. And so all the railways around Australia, both the public and also private sector railways participate in that. And,
Wow, that's a good
there's
idea.
it's a very male-dominated industry, about 80%. And so, yeah, there's special posters for that type of industry, and we've done it for, the hospitality industry, the legal industry, the car industry, and
Mm.
so we haven't really tried to control it. We've been very open to adapting it to different situations, and I think that's really
Mm.
been a key part of why it's been successful.
Mm.
And were you, when you met the co-founder, were you still in a bad place, or were you coming out the other side of it?
I was coming out the other side, and how Gavin had heard of me was through my books. I had, a book called Back from the Brink, and I did another
Right.
two
Okay. So
versions of that.
you were
Mm.
well on your way to
Yeah, I was,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I'd spoken at a Lifeline conference, and someone there heard my story and introduced me to Gavin, and that was, a fantastic core team that
Mm.
really worked to, create something pretty special.
Was that first book part of your healing? Like really writing
Definitely.
it all out and processing it all?
Definitely. I said before, when you're um, struggling, when you're in a bad place yourself, you're really me focused. It's hard
Yeah.
not to be me focused. But this book was a deliberate effort to think about we, to think about people who had been through some tough times or going through tough times. And we're interested in reading stories of people who've been there and come back. Because when
Yeah.
I was in a bad place, that's what I really yearned for, was
Mm.
stories of people like me that have gone through some tough time and, come out of it
Well,
through
you
how.
give that hope, don't you? Like your story just shows people this is possible for you too. And I think it's very different when, you're speaking to someone that theoretically knows what you're talking about compared to someone that's been in it, been through the fire, come out the other side, knows how hard it was, and you're their expander to show them, hey, you could do this too.
Yeah, and that's very, very on the money, Tracy. And I think I was also involved as part of my recovery with basically a peer support group. And that was
Mm.
amazing as well. And for the reason you explained, you didn't have to explain to someone what
They just get it.
depression felt like, or what
Mm.
anxiety was, or what a panic attack was.
Mm.
People just knew. And it's a very, very powerful component of healing, I believe, is peer
I think
support.
so. I think
Mm,
sharing experiences, having people just totally understand, and whether that's from someone that's been cheated on, and having people understand that, or the
mm,
loss of a parent,
mm.
like no matter what it is, if you have that shared experience and you can, come together, it's really, really helpful for people. They don't
Yeah,
feel so alone. They don't feel so isolated. They don't feel like, this is all my fault. They can
yeah.
actually see, from different angles. So I think that's so beautiful that you had a peer support, program to support you in your recovery as well. That's not always available for people.
No, it's not. And, I really believe it is a bit of a missing link in the strategy of helping people with, depression or anxiety or bipolar.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, it doesn't cost much.
Yeah.
Really, once you have some guidelines and some principles and, a run sheet, and, I think it would be a big thing that could improve mental health around Australia if there were more of these peer support groups that were easy to find.
Yeah. Do you know, even as you're saying that, it's reminding me of mother's group. Our oldest is 16 and a half, and I still catch up with my mother's group. And in the very beginning, we were all very different. And if you looked around the room, you might have thought, oh, I wouldn't be friends with these people, just because they're so different. And then because you've got the commonality of having a newborn and you're in the same stages, then that support there, like we had a couple of people in our group that, did struggle with postnatal depression. So having people going through the same stages, coming together every week, like we've remained such good friends over all these years, and we're so pleased that we were putting this group together. But again, that was a beautiful initiative for whoever started mothers groups, because that really helped all of us, in those tough times to get through things. But we don't really have that in many other areas.
Yeah, we don't. And, traditionally, 50 years ago, it was often around church, and a lot of people went to church and there was a sense of community there. But, I think a wonderful example about building community is park run,
Yes,
where
yes.
people turn up every Saturday morning. You can walk as slow as you like or break a record, but it's community run, it's free.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing accomplishment to have built that movement. It's now worldwide, but it's just as much about community as it is about
Yeah.
fitness. And it started the original founder, I think was South African, but he started it in the UK, and it was about, a reason to catch up with friends. So,
Mm.
but it was two-sided. There was
Yeah.
good physical exercise, and there was also, catching up socially after it. So, yeah,
And
these
that's so true.
community.
I've got
Mm,
clients that have done park run and met people from, going there every week and seeing the same faces and, maybe going for a coffee afterwards. So yeah, just having those regular places to catch up and them being free is also really helpful, because,
yeah,
that stops it being, excluding some people that might not financially be able to, join certain groups, because there are certain groups
yeah,
where it's a fee for, membership. But to have those things available is so helpful.
So for
yeah,
anyone who doesn't know, that's like a couch to 5K kind of thing. That's what parkrun is, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
5K is, but it's always in a park.
Yeah.
Surprise,
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah.
So you get the nature element as well. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
awesome. Well, why don't we, because something you said earlier that really resonated with me is, and Tracy, you said it as well, is around hope. And I can give a very quick example of where I got hope taken away from me, and I realized, oh my God, when you don't have hope, you have nothing. Where I have a medical condition that I'm still working through, and went to see these doctors and specialists in their field, and basically he said, "There's nothing you can do. So
Do you
learn
want
to
to say
live
what
with
it
it."
is? It's Meniere's.
Yeah, Meniere's disease, and when you hear somebody say that and they take complete hope away from you,
Yeah.
it took me a while to sort of pull myself together and bounce back from that, and then have a positive outlook and go, right, well, that's what he said, but it doesn't mean there is no cure. And then having expanders, as to borrow one of your words, Tracy, of people who heal themselves from all sorts of conditions. So hopefully today, if anyone is out there who's struggling, we're going to jump into some of the things that can give them hope, which have helped you. You've obviously written a book about it. The book is called Great Leaders Care. And we're going to focus, there's three parts, because it's obviously also focused on people in, I guess, leadership positions in the corporate world. But the whole first section is around self-care. And so we're going to delve into some of those. So the first part of your book is this cool little tool that you've invented called the moodometer. I think it almost is one of those words that describes what it does, but tell us what it is and how you use it and how you used it to help yourself.
Yeah, it probably wasn't me that I maybe invented the name, but my psychiatrist, when I was really unwell, would always ask me to rate my mood. And one day I asked him, why he did that, and he said, well, it helps me to understand where you are from your perspective, but I also believe you should be able to learn how to manage your mood and maybe even master it. And I was a bit taken back up by that, and I said, well, haven't I got a clinical illness? And he said, yeah, you've had 5 major episodes of depression. You'll always have a predisposition. But I believe that we can learn how to manage the mood. And so it set me on a bit of a quest, and ended up coming across a book called the How of Happiness by Professor Sonia Lyubomirsky. And what she did was look at over 400 peer-reviewed studies and looked at what influenced mood, or what psychologists call positive affect. And really surprisingly, to me anyway, it just came down to three things. It came down to our genetics, the events that happen in our lives, and our daily actions. And the biggest contributor, and this often surprises people, is our genetics. That contributes 50%. And, some people are just born more robust, more resilient, more happy than others. And I'm not one of those. But I think the really, really optimistic element is that 40% is due to our intentional actions, what we choose to do each day. And, we have control over that. And we can
Yeah.
schedule things that are good. And the events is just 10%. Now, of course, there's massive events like COVID that might go higher than 10%, for example. But overall, we have a lot of to do with how we go for the green zone, a positive mood. And when we are in a positive mood, we're more optimistic, more resourceful, more energetic. And from a work perspective, we're in a positive mood. We're 31% more productive, can sell 37% more, and are 200% more creative. And so in this, incredibly volatile world right now, we need those skills. And that's why it's really worth the time investing to keep ourselves in a good place.
Do you know, I love that you have stats in there, because I have so many people that just think so many things are kind of, not that this is woo-woo, but it's kind of like it's just a little bit fluffy and a little bit, self-indulgent kind of thing. And so the fact that you have the stats in there to go, this benefits your business. This actually will help your productivity. And not only that, but that mood is contagious, and that's where it gets into culture. I was looking in your book as well around, what you were saying around culture and having these people that can do these things for themselves and change their mood, change their demeanor. That impacts others positively too.
There's a couple of
Very
stats I
much.
actually highlighted that I wanted to, because I agree. When you hear stats, it's like, oh my God. So this is in your book, 81% of workers worry they could burn out in the next year. 81%.
That's huge.
That's unbelievable. Nearly 1 in 3 Australian workers, over 4 million people, reported having a mental health condition lasting at least 6 months. And then 99.67% of workplace mental health suffering is invisible to the official systems. The size of those numbers blew me away and really puts everything into perspective. Like, everyone is struggling.
Do you know, can I tell you a story? I literally had, was it yesterday or Monday? I had a client within the last 2 days that came in, said to me, Tracy, I can't stay. I'm so busy at work. My boss is away. I'm in charge. And I said, please just sit down for 15 minutes at least, because he was just coming to pay the bill, because he knew that he wasn't going to make it, and he knew that
Wow.
that's his obligation. So he came and I said, please just even 15 minutes. So he gave me a quick blah, 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 in 15 minutes. But that's all he felt like he could manage. And I thought, isn't that crazy? You're so stressed, and you're sitting in your therapist's office telling me you can't stay. And he'd missed, and the reason why he was paying that appointment was because the week before he'd also cancelled. So he'd
Wow.
had 3 appointments with me, and out of those 3 appointments, 15 minutes was only
Well,
in the chair. The rest
Yeah.
was just he'd cancelled them, didn't come. So people are just not even finding the time. And I give people reminder messages. So he wanted to come. He could have cancelled the day before, but for him, he
Yeah.
kept thinking, no, I'll fine, I'll fit it in, And then he
Yeah.
felt on the day he couldn't.
Yeah.
So I just feel like his boss wouldn't have known that.
There's a busyness epidemic, and I think the more stressed you are, the more you come down to the amber zone, the less insight and reflection you have on what's really effective and what's just really busy. And, it's never been more important to focus on the things that have the greatest impact. And often that means saying no to many, many things and saying yes to the ones that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, move the
But
needle a little. little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us with the mood meter, the way that you've done it, and I agree, I'm with your psychiatrist that I do that with my clients too, that I'm always sort of, where are you on the scale of 1 to 10? Because it gives me an indication of, can we change that? So if you were a 4 last week, you know, you were 5 this week, what was the change that you made to get you to a 5? How can we get you to a 6? So I love that you've broken it down in the different language and the different colours, because I think that that's much easier for people to identify. So do you want to go through kind of, you know, from 1 to this number would be the green zone, and then from here would be the amber zone, like just people get a sense of that traffic light system?
Yeah, so the red zone is the bad area
Where we want to
of the
stay away from.
moodometer. And that's, you know, when we feel depressed, anxious, angry, ashamed. And, you know, that's a very, very tough area to be in. And as I mentioned before, the longer you're there, the harder it is to sort of get out of it.
Yeah.
Amber zone is more just about, you know, stress, you know, a bit on edge. And it's sort of like the, you know, the mid area. And it's where you are feeling like that client you had. That'd be the bottom of the amber zone, you know, where they haven't got time to sort things out. That's a
Yeah.
real danger sign.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the biggest thing is for people to know or to realize or to understand, what does my amber zone look like? You know,
Yeah.
and because if you can recognize that and take action, it's far faster than turning around than if you down to the red, you've been the red for a couple of weeks. Like, you know, the early intervention is a, you know, a massive thing. And I still have, you know, challenges now. You know, I have a busy life now. I have a very good life, but a busy life as well. But when I sense that amber zone, when I start the early morning waking again and feel anxious at night, I now just take, you know, 2 steps. And those 2 steps is to call my psychiatrist and have a word with him. And I probably now speak to him maybe just once or twice a year. But, you know, having that connection is really, really good. And what he always says is the first thing we get under control is your sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that.
And and he says, you know, this is how we're going to tweak your medication. So that's a massive relief because you feel that there's positive action to prepare your
Something can be
sleep.
done. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the second thing is to tell my wife or 2 mates as well that you know, I've just sort of slipped down, just letting you know. And there's something very grounding about that and supportive about that, you know, telling people that you're not in the best shape.
Do you know, I love that. We actually had a guy, a guest on, you know, last year, and he is measuring the mood of Australia, and he has these certain pillars that people can go on their website and fill out their forms. But one of the bits that I really liked about his was you had people checking in, that your results got sent to a couple of people that you nominated. So then they're following up with you. They're sort
Yeah.
of saying, oh, I noticed that this in your results, like, what can we do? Can we go out for a drink? You know, like go out for a coffee or something. And so having people check in, again, it's that connection. It's feeling cared about, feeling important to somebody. They're all beautiful things that can also lift, you know, your mood because you feel cared about. So I think you linking that into 2 mates as well is beautiful.
And you know, teams, mates, families, they're on the moodometer as well. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I refer to having, you know, your green zone tribe, you know, the people that you do enjoy catching up with, you do it consistently, but you can be vulnerable with them as well. And particularly men are very poor at that, you know, and tragically, that's why men account for 75% of suicides, or one of the key reasons
Yeah.
that they think they should be able to sort it out themselves. And there's lots of theories about why that is, whether it's, you know, we're supposed to be the problem solvers, you know, we fix it and sort it out. And when you can't, you feel very desperate. But, you know, really striving and thinking about who are the people I feel good being around and do I see them enough? And, you know, one of the things I do every week is to fill out what's called a VIP action planner. And the V is for vitality. So that's our physical health, you know, so move well, rest well, eat well, and, you know, making sure you plan for that. Intimacy is the second one, about supportive relationships. And that's making sure that you do catch up regularly with good friends, and actually having a ritual for that. And one of the things I do, for example, is every Sunday morning I meet two mates at Curl Beach in Sydney. We walk down to Manly, come back and have a coffee. And that's a wonderful thing. I've also got mates that I meet during the week and just walk with. And there is something very powerful as well, A, being in nature, but also shoulder to shoulder. You can really be frank about what's happening. And,
They say
these
because you're not eyeballing each other across the table. It's a safety when it's side by side. So walking, being in the car, anything like that.
very much so, you often know, the impact with kids being in the car. Everyone's looking forward. And holy mackerel, the things they come up with sometimes,
Yes, yes,
which I doubt they'd come up with if you were, across there. So having that principle, I think, is very good. And, just with these morning Sunday walks, I've been doing it for 15 years now. And, it's mainly, great fun catching up, laughing and joking. But we've
yeah,
also had people go through, all of us have lost all our parents in the last 15 years, for example. So having support around that.
yeah,
Uh, so there's been financial challenges, with, some things happening, unexpected things happening. But, they always say a problem shared is a problem halved. And, I've found that to be true, absolutely.
And people often say to me, "Oh, I don't want to tell someone and bring them down, or I don't want to burden them. They've got so many things going on." But I say to them, when they feel like they've got so much stuff going on for themselves, to hear that you also have things can be quite comforting for them. Or if they can be there and support you, they feel more likely to go to you with support. But if they're always the one that comes to you and you never share anything with them, they feel like, "I don't want to burden you. I'm always coming to you with my problems." So if it can be reciprocated, it's nice for both parties. And people don't really think about that.
And you're so right. And what I've also found, and you alluded to this, is when I share my story, it gives people permission to share their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And and everyone has a story.
Yes.
It might
Yes.
not be specifically like your story, but it's associated.
Yeah.
They might not have mental health challenges, but they're quite likely, very likely to know a family member or a friend that does. And
Yeah.
so, when you heard those statistics before that, 99% of workplace issues aren't being reported, that's shows you how pervasive it
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
I do know about that study. It was actually done by Monash University, and they looked at the number of mental health claims versus the number of people that were having monthly episodes. And so it's pretty robust that, most people in the workplace don't discuss it.
Yeah. Do you think that's because they feel like people are going to think, "I'm not managing, I'm weak, or I'm, not capable of this role." So they're worried about that judgment?
There's been good progress in workplaces, with things like Are You OK? And the Black Dog and Beyond Blue have done, very good work as well. But there still is stigma. There
You,
still
I
is.
read in your book as well that people can now be charged, or they can, get prosecuted around stress with workplaces. Is that correct?
You mean the bosses?
Yes, the bosses.
Yeah,
If they were,
yeah.
if there was chronic stress in the business and they weren't, taking different steps to protect their workers, that they could actually face legal proceedings.
Yes, and significant. And, the bodies that oversee it, like WorkSafe, they say, creating a mentally healthy and psychologically safe workplace is just as important as preventing physical injury because it can be just or more
Yeah.
harmful sort of thing.
Never,
And
never thought about that. Oh, sorry. You keep going.
yeah, I was just going to say, so there's technical language which they use, which is called psychosocial risk. And what that is harmful work stress. And so it is every leader's, every board member's responsibility to know what the stress is in the organization and have plans to reduce it. But it goes even deeper than that, in that Safe Work has identified 14 root causes of this harmful stress. So it could be things like too much work. It could be things like I don't have a clear job description. It could be things like I've got a bully who works with me. I've it could be things like I've got poor support from my manager during this change process.
Right.
So, and the fines for leaders can be up to $1 million.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you
And
know what's
and sorry, go on.
So, do you know what's interesting? I had a friend and a colleague who she was working for a government agency, and because she was a senior social worker, she had the toughest of the client loads. And then during that time that she had all these, high needs clients, she also took on a case that was very high profile. It was going through court and there was a lot of media attention. So she had to make sure that she was on cross all of her notes and making sure she was, on top of everything amongst this really busy role. And she's a mum of two, and she was, I don't even think she was full time at the time. She was part time, but she was pretty much doing full time roles. But she would email me or message me in the middle of the night saying, I can't make the gym in the morning. And I'd look at the time of when she sent that, and it'd be 2 a.m, 1 a.m, really crazy times, because she was trying to get on top of those notes. And I said to her, I'm really worried you're going to burn out, because I'm knowing you're burning the candle at both ends. Like sometimes you make the gym in the morning with me, but I'm knowing you're up really late at night, or you're just doing too much stuff. Anyway, so during this time of her workplace, they knew how busy not only her was, but other team members. So they put together a wellness day, and she was thinking that's great, they're going to do this wellness day. Then she looked at the date and saw it clashed with some training that they were already providing, from this organisation. So she said to them, oh look, I can't make that day. And I talked to her and said, why don't you say to them, could I just have a different day where I go to my supervisor and talk through, my stress and what's going on for me, do something nice for myself that day. So give myself the same day, but I can't attend the one that's been formally planned. And they said no. And so it actually broke her. She was going, at this point, there was also more stuff in the case that was really even increasing that stress. And when she really felt like, you don't care about me, that's actually when she broke. She got an autoimmune disorder. Her hands started getting all puffy and tingly. So that chronic stress that she'd been carrying for that whole time turned physical. And then she ended up going out on stress leave. She had a whole year off work. So when you were talking about the cost of what it cost to workplaces for not managing this, that cost them a whole year of her salary. And guess what? She didn't return to the department. She now is in private practice and happy as ever. But it took a beautiful, amazing worker away from good work that she was doing because she wasn't supported.
And that's just so scandalous. It really is.
Yeah.
It's short-term decisions with no perspective, and not well informed. And that's an example of not being aware of the overload as well. There's one example which is probably just worth briefly discussing. There was a group called Cobar Management. They were a mining company, and they were a Swiss had a Swiss head office, and two accountants had to, communicate with the Swiss people in Switzerland, and obviously that meant strange hours and really tough hours, and they sort of brought that to the attention of their supervisor, and they said, oh, manage your time, you sort it out yourself. Anyway, it led to eventually an investigation, and the inspectors come in and they identified that poor role definition, poor management with this, difficult time zone situation. And the company, and it wasn't a large company, ended up having to pay $1 million to address it. Wow. And that was about, consciously being aware of what were the root causes of stress in that workplace, because they had nothing in place, and not being proactive. It's no excuse to say, I don't know about this law. You have to know about it.
Yeah. I love what you said about what's underneath it, like of not knowing the role, not knowing these. Like, I don't think a lot of people would know that that's the root cause of underneath, a lot of the stresses for people.
You would hope so, but, to know that, you have to be, a curious person, and not all managers are curious, but they tend to give their perspective, but without truly understanding the other person.
So when you work with leaders and you're coming in and you're giving the stats and you're showing all this, evidence, like how do you get received? Are people blown away? Are they surprised?
Not anymore.
Well, that's good. Anymore. That's good.
10 years ago, it was like pushing it uphill, but it really was. But now it's just, generally acknowledged. And there's some really big drivers of really bad stress in the workplace. This AI revolution, which is turning workplaces upside down, the chaos in the Middle East and all the uncertainty around that. And also the cost of living crisis. Any people who've got a large mortgage, I've seen massive increases over the last just 2 years or so. So they have to be aware of that. But the other thing that I found out as well, and this is Wiley research from just December 25, so not too long back, but they found that 47% of managers are severely stressed each week, almost one in two managers. And so, that's why, in this book about leadership, whether it's work or family, start with yourself. You've got to keep yourself
Yeah.
in that green zone because that's the best way that you're able to support and role model healthy practices
Yeah.
for those people around you.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's go into, you've got 4 key areas that I assume you've definitely applied to yourself and what you teach in the book. So I'll quickly go through them. There's mindset, which is, we'll delve into that. Vitality, which is physical health. Intimacy, which is your relationships. And prosperity, which is your career. Why don't we start with mindset? So you've got kind of 3, I think, key areas. The self-compassion, growth mindset, and the upside of stress,
Yeah,
which would be
yeah.
interesting to talk about. So delve in wherever you want to start.
Well, I just felt it was worth, before we started about doing things, that people really need to understand some really proven concepts, about how humans operate. And it was Christine Neffs wrote a book called Self-Compassion. And what she found was that we're often say things to ourselves we would never say to a friend or family member. We're harder on ourselves than,
I bang on about this all the time, Graeme.
but she also, then shares the benefits of self-compassion. And it has all the upside of self-esteem, but none of the downside. So the downside of self-esteem is that you think you know everything, you're dismissive, you're competitive, you want to beat people. But not just individuals, but managers that practice self-compassion are more resilient, have greater well-being than those that didn't. And this has all been investigated deeply, but it was Christine Neffs that really started it.
And I
The
would bet
sec-
that people are kinder. If they've got
yeah,
self-compassion, they're more
yeah,
compassionate to other people.
yeah, that's right. And when we see rude people or people that are giving others a hard time, considering they're really hurting inside. They
Yes.
need to practice self-compassion
Yep.
themselves
Yep.
because that's how that abhorrent behavior, it's one of the root causes, I believe, in that sort of really horrible behavior.
I
So,
agree.
but just being kind to ourselves and just say and speak to yourself like you speak to a good friend,
Yes.
just try and put in perspective, just one thing going wrong doesn't define you, just sort that out.
Yep.
The second element is, the growth mindset by Carol Dweck. And it's fabulous research. And many companies have really embraced this. Microsoft, for example, have embedded it into their DNA. And what she showed is that, there's 2 approaches that people often have. One is called a fixed mindset. And that's believing that you're born with what you have. I'm a poor public speaker because I've always have been. I've never done it before. That's just me. Versus growth mindset, just yourself quite differently. So what you do in that situation, I'm not a good public speaker yet. Just adding one word, yet.
Yes.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and, and it recognizes that if you keep on trying and progressing and challenge yourself, going a little bit outside your comfort zone, we grow. And,
Yeah.
that's a very positive element. And the final part is Kelly McGonigal, The Upside of Stress. And she has a book of that name. But what she has found, how we think about stress determines whether it's good or bad for us. So if we think that stress is bad, we have poor outcomes, poor situations. But if you just reframe it slightly and just think like, okay, this is raising my anxiety a bit, but it's just lifting my energy. So this could be helpful,
Yeah.
for giving a good presentation or, serving a customer or whatever. And so those three areas is, something that I think everyone can benefit from. We're not limited people. We've got to be
Mm.
easy on ourselves. We've got to
Yeah.
encourage ourselves and to know that, how we think about things has a big impact on our well-being.
Absolutely, because it creates the chemicals. As soon as you're interpreting something in a certain way, that's then setting you up for the chemicals that are getting released, and then that's what you're feeling. So, yeah, I actually had a client the other day that literally said to me, I really enjoy stress, and it's because he loves his job, and so that kind of gives him that energy to get something done in a busy period. So he really didn't see it as a problem.
Yeah, and that
So I,
makes all the difference. There's actual research I quote in the book there that even if you have a little bit of stress, but you think of it badly, you have worse outcomes than someone that has higher stress but thinks of it and reframes it and sees it as a positive sort of thing. So, yeah.
Wow.
well, I was just thinking about how you began in your 40s, and often people in their 40s will have some sort of crisis, midlife crisis of feeling like, what's this all about, and what's my purpose, and while you obviously had the depression and you went through really challenging times, I feel like that really gave you your purpose. That's really turned your whole career around, what you focus on, what you put out to the world, and what you share. Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree with that totally. When Mum said it when I was in that situation, I thought, oh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no chance, no chance.
Mm,
But now when I look back, and how it did fundamentally change my priorities, my values, who I spend time with, it just helped to make my life really good. And
yeah.
and so I don't regret having gone through that now because, it led to where I am now.
And
And
what you're giving to everybody now, and showing everyone the way, like, and I can hear that it's still ongoing in terms of those regular intentional steps, which is what keeps your life so beautiful. So you didn't just come out of this terrible situation and kind of get back on your feet and do it all again. You totally changed your world.
yeah, I did. And that the VIP for, our physical well-being, the vitality, intimacy, prosperity is just embedded into my week now. I plan it on Sunday and there's another Professor Peter Gollwitzer who's out of New York University, and he specialized in intention to action, wanting to do something and then actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's found, and it's been replicated heaps and heaps of times, that if you decide when and where you're going to do it, it increases the chance of it happening by 300%.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
that's a lot.
I
300%.
guess because you've made a real plan about it.
So you put it in the diary. So, it's scheduled. And then you
Yeah.
think, okay, if I'm going to do a walk that day, will I do the walk? If I'm going to,
Mm.
you know, meditate, where am I going to do that? And increase the chance of it happening. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it if you can embed it into your your operating system, um,
And what you're doing.
it does create well-being rituals that have real benefits.
Do you find that your podcast helps with that? You're doing your podcast, caring CEO, and I was really impressed when Scott said that you're number two in the space
Globally,
of
even, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's really incredible. So how many years ago did you start your podcast?
It was probably about 4 years ago. And, I did it because I fundamentally believed that if you had a good, cohesive, mentally healthy team, it would be good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually evidence that does prove that. Gallup have an engagement survey and they've developed over 50 years and it's got 12 questions now. And one of those statements is, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. And it's been asked over 1 million times, 100 countries, and they can definitively say that the more people that strongly agree with that in the organization, the higher the productivity, the higher the profit, the higher the customer service, and the longer people stay there.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's I guess the evidence. And then with my colleague, we've started a business called We Care 365. And we said, well, how can we prove that? And well, let's get, people that are actually doing it. And so, yeah, we've had some amazing interviews, the CEO of Bunnings and
Yeah.
Microsoft and Telstra and Adobe and Are You OK and St. John's Ambulance. And there are great leaders out there that do consciously champion those two things. And you know, it's not a soft skill anymore, being empathetic or providing
Mm,
care. It's a strong skill
mm,
because it's what determines the success or not of a team. You know, AI can replace all sorts of things, but it can't replace, those human elements, where
mm,
you spot someone who not might be quite right at the moment or is behaving differently, or someone
mm.
who's ready for promotion because, they're fired up by new challenges. Creating a vision that inspires people. They're all very, very humans skills and qualities that are strong, not soft, they're strong.
Yeah.
I've got a few things I want to say. The one of the things that really popped out to me is, and I haven't been in the corporate world for about 10 years, but I remember how much I used to work in the building industry. And I remember how much emphasis they would put on physical health, like safety on the work site. That was everywhere. It was everywhere all the
Absolutely.
time for everything. And there was not a lot about mental health. So it's really good to know that there is CEOs out there that are putting a lot more emphasis onto that side now.
Mhm.
You're so right, Scott. Like I've spoken to construction companies and basically, for safety days, that sort of stuff. And they talk about, their top five injuries and they've tracked them
Mm.
over 10 years and they know the root causes. And then I'm brought in to just explain what, psychosocial safety is,
Yeah,
just to
Mm.
explain it, let
yeah,
alone take any action on it. So it's a long, long way behind physical injuries, but the same disciplines need to be applied to understanding the root causes of harmful stress and
yeah,
reducing it.
absolutely. And the other thing that popped into my head when you were talking is, and it sort of reminded me of a conversation we had. So Tracy and I run a self-care retreat, and we
Ah,
just got back from one 2 weeks ago. And the premise sort of is what you're doing and what we do is it's a daily thing. And I think
mm,
some of the people who come to the retreat think, oh yeah, this is going to cure me and I'm going to be totally fine after this. And
mm,
then you start having conversations with them, and this is where I think a conversation can change someone's life. And I'm thinking
mm,
about one specific conversation I had with this one person, and if he's listening, he knows who he is. And it was really just explaining to him that it's just all of these little things. And I know you talk about gratitude quite a bit in your book, and I'm massive on gratitude. So I was just explaining to him the concept of gratitude and how gratitude and anxiety do not mix. Like it's very, I think, almost impossible. I heard Oprah say this once. It's impossible to feel grateful and anxious at the same time.
100%.
And I was having this conversation, and it was funny to me because it's something I've lived now for about a decade, and it was totally new to him. So for me, it was like, yeah, it's just normal. But for him, it was
Mm,
this totally revolutionary concept where I'm like, just,
mm,
what can you be grateful for today? And I was explaining the simplest little things, like I like a cup of tea in the morning, and then that cup of tea with a nice, like I'm a bit
mm.
obsessive about honey. I have lots of different types of honey, and so I like putting different types of honey in my
He's a bit of
tea.
a
And
connoisseur with the
yeah,
honey.
yeah. So just trying to point out to him that it can be very, very small things. And then seeing him, because we have a WhatsApp group after the retreat, and seeing him share photos of like the tiniest little things that he can be grateful for. Like I don't know if it was
He
him
was
or,
hanging up the washing and he was doing it barefoot. So he was
yeah,
grounding and being grateful that,
yeah,
because we said you can change it to, I get to do this. So rather than being like, oh,
yes,
I've got to do the washing, instead think, oh, this is my family. They're not always going to, need me to do their washing. So I get to do it. So just changing that mindset and that way of interpreting it.
yeah.
But yeah,
There's
it's
a,
that habit stacking as well.
yeah, there's a great book called 365 Thank Yous by an American lawyer called John Kralik, I think his name was. But he found himself walking around the hills of California on News Day feeling crap. His business was crap. His relationship had gone down. It was in the, the subprime crisis. He was a mortgage lawyer. Everything was bad. And he just sort of had this insight. Well, I don't, we had a sort of a voice or something that said, how can you be grateful for something in the future if you're not grateful for what you have today? So it sent him on a mission, and he wrote a thank you note every single day for a whole year.
Love it.
It could be just for the hairdresser for doing,
Yeah.
listening to them and doing a great job. It could be writing to his ex-wife because she takes such great care of the kids. Writing to customers because they paid on time in a very tough economic environment. And of course, it's no straight line, but his life just totally transformed by doing that, by consciously thinking,
Yeah.
who can I thank today?
Yeah, he's looking for it.
Yeah.
And
He's
that's
looking for it.
changing. Yeah, they're changing the filter rather than looking for what's going wrong. You're looking for what's going right.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
no,
beautiful.
Yeah, that's the big part of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What about physical, so vitality? So maybe explain, what physical health were you in at your lowest ebb, and what did you do to then sort of get back on track?
Yeah, when the busyness and craziness of work and, I'd let exercise go. I always loved activity. I was a good sportsman growing up, but, it had really declined, quite substantially. And, there's so much overlap with our physical health. If we often let our exercise go down, we can have poor sleep because of it.
Yep.
And if we eat poorly, that can directly impact our mood and our outlook as well. And so, yeah, I had gradually let that go. But I now have, it's become so ingrained now, but, I usually have about, 3 long walks, one and a half hour walk sort of thing, usually with a friend, as I said, one on Sunday, one during the week. And then one by myself. And then I do 3 sessions with weights, just with dumbbells, just following a video guide. And, once you get over 40, you lose, one
Muscle mass.
kilo of muscle
Yeah.
every year sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, it's something we have to do. And then, just also, thinking about food and what I eat. And I've embraced intermittent fasting. So I've just found that's something that works for me. And
What's
helps
your
get.
schedule? What's your fasting schedule?
It's basically I just skip breakfast. It's
Yep.
it's that simple,
Yep.
and usually don't eat lunch. But when you work it out, it works hours without food because your last meal is the night before. And anyway, it just works for me.
Yeah.
And
Gives your body a chance to repair.
yeah, and my wife and I are going overseas to Europe on Saturday, and that's always hard because different environment, airports, all that sort of stuff. But I do know that when I come back, I can go straight to that and get things under control. So,
Can I
and
can I
then
ask about that? Sorry, can I ask about your wife? Like, you obviously had a relationship breakdown, when you hit your rock bottom. So how long into your recovery and feeling good did you meet your now wife?
it was probably about after my recovery. It was probably around. Yeah, about 5 years after there. I had some other relationships before then, but this one really worked. And she works in an interesting area as well. She's a global expert in eliminating cervical cancer.
Oh,
And
wow.
Wow.
so she and her team are the architects of the Australian policy, which means Australia will be the first country in the world to eliminate cervical cancer.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
Look at you. You've linked up with someone else that's doing amazing things in the world.
So, our areas of expertise are obviously very different, but there's also lots of overlap as well, in terms of how you present, how you simplify concepts, how you adjust it for different audiences and that sort of thing. But we've have a wonderful life now. We usually go on one big long multi-day walk a year, and last year we went walking around Mont Blanc in
Oh, nice.
Europe over 170 kilometers. And
So walking
yeah,
is a big part of your recovery, isn't it? Like it
it
sounds like that's
was.
really
Yeah,
been
yeah, it was. Yeah.
pivotal.
I used to run, but I previously played football and my knee's very dodgy now. So
Mm.
if I run, I know that I'll have to get a knee replacement, which I don't want. So
Yeah.
yeah, rather than that, I walk instead.
They say with walking, I do a technique called EMDR, which is an eye movement technique. And the way
Mm.
that that technique was discovered was from a lady walking, and it was to do
Ah,
with her eyes crossing the midline of her body. And when you walk, your eyes naturally dance in that bilateral eye movement.
wow.
So it's meant to do the same thing as what this EMDR, that's how it got discovered. So I think that's part of why that works so well for you to process things. And, as you're walking on your own, your brain is just naturally, kind of balancing that or processing that. So I think maybe that's
Yeah.
part of why you've done so well with your walking. And I read in your book as well that when you were downloading, like I said, downloading, that's where it was all coming to you. Your concepts for the book was when you did a really big walk and you didn't have any music or friends, or you just did your own big walk.
Yeah. So how that then happened through one of my interviews with Mike Schneider, the CEO of Bunnings, and he said that he, led his life by his four H's, both his personal life and his work life, what he wanted to be. And so those four H's for him were honest, humble, helpful, and happy.
Mm.
And I really love that. And I often share that when I do a keynote presentation. You see people madly writing stuff down. But I thought, what's my version of this? And so I did go on a 12-hour walk. And, it's by there's a concept doing that. But the big thing, it's not the distance, but it's being by yourself completely. So no
Mm.
podcast, no music, no people.
This is my
Uh,
next challenge. Yep.
so you're allowed to put your phone on to find out where your blue dot is and you're not lost.
That's it.
But I end up come up with my five C's, which is caring, centered, curious, constructive, and chuckling like dad. My
Yeah, I
father
liked
had
that one.
a but yeah, that does help guide each day and each week. And
Mm.
each week I go to a different C and focus that week on how I can practice that each day. So
And
again, it's just
again, it's the intentionality, isn't it? You're so
it is.
intentional with what you're doing, and you're mixing it up so it's, not boring. It's not Groundhog Day. You've got different conversations and different things you're doing. But again, that intentionality shows you're important and you're living your life in those things that you value, and then fitting everything else around that.
I learned all that the hard way.
That's why you're teaching everyone now so they don't have to do that. Yeah.
I noticed in your book you referred to the Gottman. So this is in the intimacy section, and Tracy is very familiar
Yeah, we have a
with.
relation. I have a relationship retreat also, as well as the individual retreat, and we
Fabulous.
reference a lot of the Gottman's work because they're world leaders, in relationships. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear what you have learned from the Gottmans.
Probably all the things you did, I think like it really stuck me because it was, I think I first read about them in the book Outliers, and that was where they, oh no, it wasn't, it was anyway, I can't remember the name of the book, but it talked about the Gottman moving away. It said they could see couples discussing a controversial subject and they could predict with 90%
Yes.
accuracy whether they'd be divorced or not divorced, in 5 years' time. And I thought, holy crap, that's amazing.
Yeah, it
That
was
is amazing.
contempt, wasn't it? When they saw contempt.
Yeah, and it was that, the things they talked about was that the I they had two different definitions, the masters and the disasters. That's right,
Yes.
the masters and
Yes.
the disasters. And so the masters fight just as much as other people, but they do it in a different way. They talk about the issue and don't really lay blame. They don't say, well, you're lazy, you never do stuff on time. They talk about the issue, and that's a really big component.
Yeah.
And the other thing I thought was also really important was that, responding to bids,
Yes,
if
the
one,
bits of
one
connection.
bids
Hmm.
a connection, if someone says, oh, look at that bird. And, the partner really does look at the bird and really does engage. And the other part that I found also really interesting was that they celebrate the wins of the other person, even more important than supporting the bad times.
Yeah.
And yeah, just gold.
They're beautiful concepts, aren't they? Yeah.
Are we masters?
We would be up there. I don't think we're disasters. Let's put it that way.
I was running through the recent arguments in my head going, are we masters or does it?
No,
I
we're
think
fine.
I think we are too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we've taken up tons of your time. There's one question that I kind of wanted to finish on is what would you say to someone out there who's listening, who's maybe having a tough time, maybe feeling like they're not okay? What advice would you give them?
I think, very, very solid first step is to, share it with another person if you haven't done that already, just, and I read recently a man who I know, but when his marriage broke up, he went through his phone and he realized he didn't have anyone to talk to about it.
Oh.
And, men can be prone to that, leaving women to be the social secretary, they often call it. And often the women have really great networks through the mothers club or school or whatever. And of course, that's all changing and fluid. So, yeah, but share it with someone that you really can be confide in. And if you don't have that, think about calling a helpline and having the opportunity to speak. And there's a lot out there. There's one specifically for men. There's domestic violence ones. There's Lifeline. There's suicide callback service. And if it's gone on for, I would say, if it's then sort of led to feeling bad physically and mentally, to, of course, see a doctor or a psychologist. It's never as bad as you think. And when, as I alluded to before, when you're in the red zone for a while, you're not thinking sanely.
Yes.
You don't believe that recovery is possible. And it is. And that's, one of the reasons, like I do share my story because I want people to know that even if you're thinking things are hopeless, they're really not.
Yeah.
And taking some positive steps to share it with people, to see a doctor or a psychologist, and just have the opportunity to talk it through and to be heard. That's step one. And of course, begin to walk or whatever you enjoy, whether it's cycling or dancing or swimming,
Move your
start
body.
that small.
Move your body. Yeah.
Move your body, and it doesn't have to be big. You start small and do it repeatedly. And when people are often in that situation where they don't feel like exercising, I say, well, your job for the next week is to put on your shoes and get out to the letterbox. That's your job.
Yep.
That's all. And if you want to go for a bit of wander after that, but that's your job this week. But that can be a reset because they find that, well, I'm out here, I've got my shoes on, all I'm out is just walk up the road. But you only have to get to the letterbox. So to make it easy, to get started.
Just breaking it down into those tiny steps so it seems achievable rather than being, I'm going to go for an hour walk and then that just seems so daunting. Yeah, that's perfect.
Was it you, Tracy, who was alluding to that concept with hoarding? How people have houses full of stuff. So I might have been listening to a podcast. I listen to a lot of stuff. Basically, there was this is how they can deal with someone who's got a real issue with hoarding in their house is basically you can't walk through because there's so much junk everywhere. They would go, well, today we're actually just going to get the vacuum out and we're just going to let it sit there. And then tomorrow we're going to plug it in. And then the next day we're going to turn it on. Yeah,
it would be the same. That wasn't me that said that.
Right.
But I say that to people in terms of activities. If they want to be connecting more with people, I'll say your first task is just sit on the computer and just look at all the things in your area. You're not even contacting anybody. You're just seeing what is available. And then the next step could be, which one would you like to join? Can you email, or can you get the information around that particular thing? So it's just so small. It's not even making you contact anybody. It's not even, you're not talking to anybody, but you're just getting the information to start with and then taking the next step to the next step. Because I think if you don't break it down when someone's in that really, critical state where everything feels overwhelming, it just seems like another thing on their plate, another thing that they can't get to. So it's got to be easy enough that they get the win and they get the pat on the back, and then the momentum can build from there.
I heard a lady, I think she was called the Fly Lady. She was a specialist in housework. And she said everyone has a disaster somewhere in their house, whether it's in the garage or whatever. And she came up with this idea of just putting on a timer for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I like this too. Yeah.
5 minutes. But it works,
Yeah.
just to say, well, I can do 5 minutes.
Yep. And that 5 minutes, I do this now. I have a heat pack that I always heat up, and it's 2 minutes. I've got to put it in the microwave. And so I look around the kitchen or whatever, and I think, what can I do for 2 minutes? Because otherwise I'm just standing there. And I can get a lot of stuff done. I come back and I'm like, oh, I've still got 30 seconds. But it's crazy what you can actually get done compared to that wasted time that we always have.
I'd love you to focus on that cupboard next to the sink, because that needs work.
I think it's longer than 2 minutes.
Now, is there anything, Graeme, that you would like to cover that we have not covered?
I have a moodometer action plan, which I'm very
good.
happy to send to you. It's just a one-pager, and it talks about the 5 things if you're in the red zone, these are the 5 things to do to get to the amber zone.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I'll send that through, and then there's 5 about staying in the red zone. And on the back of that it's a two-sided post. On the other side is how to support a teammate in distress, but equally applies, of course, to a loved one. And that goes through the eye care framework I talked about before.
Perfect.
And I'm also happy to also share my self-care scorecard, which is how to evaluate yourself across those 3 categories: the vitality, intimacy, prosperity, and a weekly planner. So happy to send that through to you.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love things that people can actually look at. And again, that's an intentionality, and it's easier if they're looking at something and kind of going, where do I see myself in that, compared to in that moment going, oh, what do I feel? Just to point to something because it jumps out at you is much easier, way to do that. So I love these resources. This is brilliant.
And I'll make sure we have links in the show notes that people can access those. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So
we so appreciate it. Yeah, this book is amazing.
The book is, so we've really just gone through one pillar. So the book has 2 more pillars, which is around being a good leader and caring for your team. And so you've got heaps more content that we haven't discussed in the show that you can find in the book, which is called, hold up to the camera there, Great Leaders Care. I assume you can find that in any good bookstore. And the podcast as well, The Caring CEO.
Yeah. And I had some wonderful news last week that through BookScan data, that Great Leaders Care was the number 2 most purchased business book last week.
Oh my
wow.
God, well
That's
done.
huge.
That's so good.
Well done.
You're
very
going to go to
exciting.
all this effort to write a book and to, do all this work. Like, you want it to land. So that's amazing
course.
that, you've done so well with it, and well deserved. Like, when I was looking through there, again, the stats really impressed me because it shows people, hey, this is important stuff, and we've got to start looking at this properly.
Definitely.
Wonderful. Well, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for being on the show,
We really
Graeme.
appreciate your time.
Really nice to meet you.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Scott and Tracy. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.
All right. Graeme was nice.
He was lovely. He was so knowledgeable.
Yeah. I think that if you do run your own business or you manage people, it'd definitely be worth reading that book. I probably should have read that book when I managed people, because I still think I was not a good manager when I had a team. I was too stressed. And,
But even if you're not a manager, I think reading that and then handing it to your manager.
that'd be a power move.
Yeah, it would be a power move. Yeah, absolutely. No, he was so knowledgeable and such a good human out there in the world doing good work.
Yeah, making a difference. So hopefully that resonated with you. If you are struggling, then because that was actually the other thing that we didn't talk about it, but the thing that popped 5 years. That's a long time.
It's a very long time.
Man, to go through that for 5 years and then come out the other end, that's the thing that I think people could really take hope from, because as I said in the episode, if you don't have hope, you don't really have anything. So
maybe that's why he was so intentional. He's so intentional now in making sure that all those steps that he does daily, are his priority.
Yeah.
I can understand why, which we all should be like that.
So credit to him for pushing through for that long and coming out the other end. Okay. We had a quick chat before we did this outro, and we're like, should we plug anything? We go, I don't know. If you've listened to us for any length of time, you know that we run retreats. One of them's a relationship one. The other one's a self-care one. The self-care one is in October. The other relationship one is probably November.
Yeah, it's November.
You also know that we're pretty big on the whole online breathwork. So check out our YouTube channels because I'm very proud of those. They're called Breathe Deep, which is me DJing deep house music and Tracy doing more of a breath awareness. It's not emotional. It's if you can't meditate, try this.
It's not breath awareness.
Okay, what is it?
It's more activated. Breath awareness is very gentle and
you've done 4.
Yeah, they're all.
Okay. What is it called? Breath activation.
Well, no, it's more of an active breath.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It's not down regulated. Breath awareness would be all down regulated.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
The most recent one is my favorite, which is the volume 4. By the time this podcast comes out, I might have done volume 5, but volume 4 is, I love it.
So far, it's your favorite, isn't it?
Genuinely my favorite out of any breathwork from anyone, including Othership, which is an app that does hundreds of breathworks. And the reason I like it is because I've done a lot of breathwork, and I no longer really get those tingly feelings when you've really pumped a lot of oxygen in. But when I do volume 4, I get those tingly feelings and feel a little bit buzzed, which I like.
That's why it's not breath awareness.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So give it a try.
Yeah, so that's on our YouTube channel at tracyquayle.therapy or my DJ one, which is DJ Scotty Q. That's pretty much it, I think. Well, the other thing is, obviously this show spreads from word of mouth mostly. We're not up there in the Spotify algorithm. They're not putting us up there with Joe Rogan and Diary of a CEO. So
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, to quote the show. Not yet. So if you do like the show and you like us, then a huge way to help us is to tell someone about the podcast or flick them a specific episode if there's an episode that you think they might like. And then if you don't want to do that, but you do want to help us, then either hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and leave one of those 5-star reviews on Spotify or Apple. And, it keeps the lights on here. All right.
Thanks.
Good job today.
You too.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.